Hey there everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be working on the Peacenet tutorial, as well as a new boot up sequence. And there's going to be a lot that I'm going to be doing in this video, so it's going to be structured a bit like an 8-bit guy restoration video. But in this video, I'm going to be programming the boot up sequence, and then programming the tutorial, and then designing a logo for Peacegate and the Peacenet itself. And then, hopefully, I just recently sent out an email to Jensen asking him if he could compose a startup angle for the Peacenet that'll play once you log into a game session. And if he accepts that challenge, I've also asked him if he could possibly record a video about it. And if it goes through, if he manages to do it, then we'll see that at the end. Anyway, let's get started. First, I decided to work on the game's logo. I didn't want to go too far from the game's art style, so I just layered some font awesome icons. It's not the best, but it'll do for now. I'm using GIMP for my image manipulation program. It is an open source cross-platform program, and it works on Windows, Linux, and I do believe Mac OS. So, it's perfect for me. Creating this logo didn't actually take too long, and most of the time was spent selecting the icons I wanted to layer together. I guess GIMP needs a search feature for its open dialogues. Ah, that'll do. Time for a test run. Looks awesome so far. Now the next step is to get it into the game. Of course, I'll have to work on the boot screen first. For the boot sequence in the Peacegate operating system, I decided to go with a Linux-style approach, so the first part of it features a command line console, which will tell you a lot of stuff about the system as it starts up. Most of this was already done for me as I programmed it off-screen. However, for the text itself that you see on screen, I did have to be a little creative. And since the game already knows when to start the desktop after waiting for the boot up sequence to finish, I didn't have to worry about testing this too much. These two file system functions I'm programming look at a directory that you specify and count all the directories and files within them. I'll be using that in the boot up sequence. Of course, to prevent an infinite loop, I'm excluding any directories that end with a period or full stop. Time for the first test. And now we're at a desktop, so at least we know the boot up sequence is working. After verifying that it worked, I decided to add a few final kernel messages. Time to test them out. Everything seems to be working fine. Now let's implement the logo. Alright, so, I'm about to work on the logo in the actual game. getting it animated correctly and everything. But there's a little bit of a problem. The game is only programmed to support text during the boot up sequence, you know, with a terminal. So not only are we going to need to work lower level in the user interface engine to get this to work, but we're also going to need to deal with the fact that the game just doesn't know what we're about to do, so we're going to need to reprogram some animations a little bit. But hopefully it shouldn't be too hard, and I've already made a test composite shot in HitFilm showing what I really want to accomplish, and we can have a look at it right here. This is what I actually played it earlier in the video whenever I finished designing the logo, so let's play this. So ideally we'll want something like this to show up right before the game starts. Let's get to it. The first thing I needed to do was set up the necessary variables for animation and actually get the texture into the game. Now that the code for loading in the texture is in, let's actually add the texture to the game. This should be very easy using Content Pipeline. To ensure maximum compatibility across platforms, I disabled texture compression for all my textures. Although it'll require more RAM usage to actually load the textures in and even more disk space to store them, most people have large amounts of disk space and RAM, and it's worth allowing more people to play the game. With the texture now loaded into the game, I decided to work on animation. Programming animations by hand is quite easy if you know basic math and your game's coordinate system well. Since I programmed the game, of course, I know this stuff. Of course, rendering is only half the battle. We actually need to set up the timing for the animation to get things to look just right. I'm going to do that now. And now it's time for the first test to see if this code actually works. Looking good so far, but I'm not done yet. Next, I wanted to add some text that would sit below the logo. Since I already know where I'll place the texture on the screen, I know exactly where I can place the text label as well. And now it's time to render it. And now for a final test. Perfect.